peakprosperity.com. Chris Martenson, peakprosperity.com, is with us now. And Chris, as always, it's a pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you. And I guess I should just begin by saying congratulations to drugs for winning the war on drugs.
Yeah. Well, cannabis isn't really a drug, is it? I mean, it's an herb. No. It's a weed. It grows there. It grows out there in the fields naturally, especially in places like Kentucky where they cannot eradicate it. And if you can't beat them, join them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was just ill-conceived right from the get-go. And the government, it's turning out now that many, many more compounds, including mushrooms and ecstasy and other things, which the government has declared as Schedule 1, like the worst of the worst, have, of course, large medical benefits. And so you have to wonder, what the government was really up to and what their motivations were and what they really cared about. And you don't have to dig far to find out. It was money and power.
Money. DuPont doesn't like competition. Anyone knows the story of DuPont, just look it up. Behind the Nylon Curtain, I think, was the seminal book on the DuPonts. The fibers found in hemp, which was also banned and had no psychoactive properties or virtually none, and in cannabis, were far superior to any artificial fiber that could come out of the labs of DuPont in Delaware, a state they've owned almost since the beginning of the Revolutionary War, Chris. So we got this prohibition, lies. We got that guy, Henry Anslinger. We had the end of the war on alcohol. So we had all these thousands of revenuers, as they called them, and government agents, and they needed a job. And what better way to give them a job than to make something else illegal that shouldn't have been?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, you see that creeping regulation in all kinds of places. If you ever go down to your friendly local firearms dealer and look at the regulations they have to put up with, it's astonishing. They have to know thousands of pieces of individual code. You can't buy this one. Wait, this is pre-ban. It has to be not with this. Oh, we can't sell that unless it comes with it. It's just it's an amazing nightmare of regulations. And so when people say we need more gun laws, they really should go talk with somebody who runs one of these operations. We've got lots of laws. And of course, I think what we really need to be talking about is the fact that we live in an uncivil society that's highly violent to the rest of the world, and we're demanding that we live in peace and with no risk of any violence inside our borders, and that's just a ridiculous proposition. If you want to be a peaceful nation, you kind of have to be a peaceful nation, and we're not one. And I don't know where you want to go with all this today, but I'm a little outraged today by the apparent massive amounts of concern over this Khashoggi, the Washington Post journalist who was killed gruesomely by Saudi Arabia in the Turkish consulate there, but no outrage to be found about what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen, which is starving 13 million people right now and, using U.S. weapons to destroy busloads of kids with regularity. Nothing to be found in the U.S. press about that. So just bizarre. What I'm being asked to be outraged about on a daily basis doesn't line up with my own internal barometer, even slightly.
And he was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. I think he was related to Adnan Khashoggi, who was a world-class weapons dealer. I actually had a couple of cases against him when I was in my former life as an attorney. He owed like tens of millions of dollars. He had a condo in the Trump Tower. Or no, Olympic Towers, I take it back, because I had a client who was a neighbor of his, and then he went and died, so that was the end of that. Who knows how he went, but the Khashoggis are notorious family, and yet, but he was a reporter, Chris. Hey, if you or I got bumped off, we're theoretically journalists. Do you think they could care less?
I don't think they could care less.
Yeah, we wouldn't even get a footnote.
Yeah. No, it's just ridiculous what we're being, what we're told to care about and what we're told not to care about. And maybe that's not the ridiculous part. I get why they do that. I'm resistant to it. But it annoys me how many people sort of pick up that banner and run with it and pretend as if that's the most important thing.
Well, it's the meme generator. right? It's the meme generator. Like every day there's a new meme that goes out to the mainstream media at 4 a.m. in the morning from their masters, whether it's in the intelligence community, or whatever group it is. Their efforts are orchestrated, and transparently so, because the language, they always have a buzzword of the day, sexual abuser Kavanaugh, or whatever, drunk, wild teenager Kavanaugh. There's always a buzzword. There's always something here, right? And you just have to do a Google search of the term of the day, and you'll see it come up 50 times, hundreds of times sometimes. That's why you need to really be aware that there's an agenda out there and they're trying to tell you what to think.
Well, there is, and I think one of the largest meme generators that runs on a daily basis is called the U.S. financial markets, and I have to use double air quotes around that word markets now, because they're not markets anymore. Markets are where capital is allocated and price discovery happens. Neither of those things are occurring right now. I'm looking at the U.S. stock market as we're recording this. The S&P was down 20 some points, and it just nipple bottomed. I can't use a V bottom anymore. It just instantly decides to go the other way, and it just rockets the other direction. And of course, that's not how these things work. Somebody's in there making sure that these markets are stabilized, going the direction. I'm sure they feel they're doing God's work and something very important, but also pleased to know that somehow they and all of their insider buddies get stinking rich over all of this on a very, very consistent basis. And that's the game. But that's always trotted out. Speaking of memes, right? It's, the headlines, markets were cheered by, or whatever. I put up a tweet yesterday where I showed that every market in the world all went the same direction, tick by tick. You couldn't tell them apart. The German DAX, the Euro Stoxx 50, the Nikkei, the NASDAQ, the S&P, they all were identical. You could overlay them perfectly with each other. But the story they ran with was Morgan Stanley's earnings cheered, U.S. stocks. No, it wasn't U.S. stocks. It was global stocks. And by the way, the coordinated behavior began hours before the earnings were released. And this is the kind of stuff you'd notice if you're paying even the slightest bit of attention. But to the average person, they just hear, wow, stocks were stabilized and they went up, and maybe I should have bought something, right? Yeah, I should have bought something at the, got to buy the dips. You have to, you got to be in it to win it, or whatever these are, right? But it's all lottery. Just complete.
Wait, that's the lottery. That's the lottery. That's not supposed to be the stock market. You got to be in it to win it, right? If you don't play, they won't pay, right?
Right. Well, I mean, let's just to peel this back slightly. So Netflix up about 5% right now as we're talking. And the story is that they piled on 7 million more subscribers. That was beating the headline estimate of 6 million. So they must be doing great. But pay no attention to the fact they burned the most amount of money in any quarter of their entire existence. Every new subscriber they sign up, they're losing money on, according to their business model. And they spent $869 million more this quarter than they took in cash flow. They are just a money burning machine. So to everybody who's buying Netflix today on the basis of that headline, congratulations. And you will lose money on that at some point in the future. Unless your strategy is to sell it to a greater fool. But I'd like to remind people that's not a strategy. So at any rate, good luck with that one. But it doesn't matter. We just got these dumb stories where it's $19.99 again, Kerry. You remember eyeballs? Oh, how many eyeballs does Pets.com have? How many subscribers does Netflix have? That's what's important. No, what's important is, are they making money with their business model or not? That's what's important.
That's the McDonald's rationalization. We lose money on every burger, but we make up for it in volume. Look, if Netflix were to go to Shark Tank now, and, Shark Tank, granted, is reality TV, but it's more real than a lot of other shows for certain. They would get laughed out of the place. So you got so much competition. Everybody's doing it. Oh, yeah, you're a leader, but you're not making money, as Mr. Wonderful would say. And how do you expect to continue this business on indefinitely?
Oh, and do you have competitors? And what's the cost of entry and
acquisition, cost of acquisition of new customers?
On and on and on.
Yeah. He would rip them a new one.
Yep.
And
cost of retention.
Yeah. And they'd go out they'd go out with their tail between their legs. There are so many streaming services here, Chris. I mean, look, I moved to a new place. We've got fiber to the door, and it's the coolest thing. I mean, I'm using AT&T Uverse, and all it is a streaming service. It isn't cable TV like we know it. So that's another thing. Like, why are these companies like Comcast spending tens of billions of dollars to buy, Disney or Fox studios? This makes no sense whatsoever to me. I mean, I think I'm a practical person, but when I see this nonsense, I really got to shake my head.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many streaming services out there, and there's so much competition, and there's so many different ways to slice this, that again, if this was on Shark Tank, that would be one of the things they'd be looking at. It's like, well, you have a food delivery service using a web van. Okay. What could possibly, what's your cost here? What are your expense profiles? What are the barriers to entry? What's really going on here? And if you just took Netflix would come through the door in this Shark Tank and say, well, we've been in business a long time. Here's our financials. And it's just been a sea of red ink from a cash flow basis.
Like
if
Amazon.
They can't access the capital markets, they're out of business. All done.
Yeah. And Tesla is a perfect example. Amazon has never really been super profitable. Their server business is where it's at. But outside of that, the rest is marginally profitable, if that at best. And yet their stock has been so bid up that they can buy up any company they want. They just bought up that company that was on Shark Tank, speaking of Shark Tank, and got turned down. Ring became a $1 billion company. Amazon bought them out. And, you see these irrational outcomes, these irrational situations in the market, and you just shake your head and think, are we the only sane ones left here, Chris?
Well, this is sort of like late bubble dynamics, and it's just been going on far too long. What are we, 10 years into this insanity at this point in time? My view is that, look, even with all these market jams, and they'll get things green again, and they'll do all this stuff, the big deal is that for the first time in a long time, we're going to see the major central banks actually go to a zero position in terms of what they're adding. Let's make no mistake, they're still adding on a net basis today, all the major central banks, but it's less than it was a few months ago. It's less than it was a year ago. It should be going to zero by the end of the year. Personal prediction, Kerry, I don't think they make it all the way to zero. I think these markets will fall apart well before then. I think that it's not unlike those old Saturn V failed rocket launch things you used to see, right? Where it's going up and it's slowing. Shouldn't that rocket be going faster? And it sort of noses over and crashes, right? That's what happens when you don't have enough thrust. I think we're already seeing this in terms of emerging market, collapses in terms of currencies, bonds, stocks, all that other stuff, the rot's coming towards the center. There's just an astonishing amount of things out there that these markets should be paying attention to. And I know they're manipulated, and I know they dump money in like they are today. But when you look at what's going on in Iran and their continued threats to maybe shut down the Strait of Hormuz, when you look at what's happening with Italy going into its big showdown with the Troika, that being the EU, the ECB, and the IMF, that could end very badly for the European experiment. The China tensions that are going on right now, they're getting really ripped at the United States and Trump's style and substance of what he's up to. It's just there's so many things you could point to say, this is not a bullish story, but yet somehow every single day when the markets go down, you find these massive buy orders just come out of nowhere. And I would love to know what Bernanke's doing over there at Citadel. By the way, Citadel, for the people who don't know, is that major high-frequency trading company that's responsible for roughly 20% of all U.S. trading volume. What is Bernanke doing over there? Why did he get offered that plum position at a firm, which would be, by the way, the one I would choose to work with, them and BlackRock, would be the ones I would choose if I was in the business of saying, I need some private partnerships to help the government have the markets go in the correct direction.
Absolutely. So right about that. And, they're also, Citadel's probably responsible for about 100% of the trades that never go through because they pull their bid when the nanosecond it becomes unprofitable, and then the trade doesn't happen, even though the other party clicked the button. They're just like, they should not be permitted to exist. But our government, high frequency trading adds nothing to the fundamentals of the market. It only gives liquidity when you don't need it, and when you do need it most, the HFTs, as they're known, will disappear in a nanosecond, and then the market will be left to its own demise. We know this. We know it's coming. And they could very well wind up being the straw that breaks the market's back.
Well, it could. And, the thing that I've been writing about more and more is just, so here's a data point. On that giant day of recovery for the S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, all of that, which happened just this week. If you also looked at the U.S. dollar compared to the Japanese yen, it followed all of that tick for tick. I don't know who's controlling who, but here's the point. U.S. equity markets and the value of the Japanese yen against the dollar were. And my point here is that these are global markets now, where the U.S. markets are tracking the German markets, which are tracking the Japanese yen and all of that. And so I would think that global concerns would somehow factor into these markets, which have been, of course, destroyed in terms of price discovery, capital allocation by these interventionist central banks. But here we are. We have these global markets. So what could derail them? Well, any sort of global tensions or breakdown in global flows of money and capital and things like that. Well, guess what? That's what's going on between the United States and China right now. You've got Russia backing away, of course, from the U.S. dollar. You've got lots of foreign countries looking to get away from these global capital flows of the U.S. dollar. Plus, let's just talk about, what you mentioned with those high frequency trading programs where they can just disappear at, the click of a button, the blink of an eye. And so these feel like, places where you would want a little risk off behavior, a little caution. And day after day, all that the authorities can think to do is to prop this, sell that, which generally translates into equities and bonds get a bid, gold gets sold. That's just how they've been operating for a long time. That's the world we live in, but it feels like it's drawn to a close here.
Yeah, it definitely does have that feeling like we're in the late innings of a ball game. The home team, the favorite, is behind, and they have very little chance of getting back in the game, and it's going to be over before you know it. And unfortunately, that's where we're heading here, Chris. So, hey, peakprosperity.com, best place to find you, right? What else can you tell us?
Well, yeah, just come on by. We've got a wonderful website, community, lots of good data, and a great subscription newsletter for people who like to go deeper. This is a time where I think people really need to understand it is the late innings. So are you ready for that? Are you prepared? That's what we're talking about at Peak Prosperity.